Hi, welcome to our Year 8 exam revision lesson. So have a go at these questions. Our first few questions will relate to geometry and looking at finding unknown angles. So look at the first one and have a go. So find the unknown angles in each of the following. Okay, with the first one, they are wanting us to find A and B. Now always stop and see what diagram you have. And in this case, I can see that I've got a right angle here at 90 degrees, which I forgot to draw. And that means A and 30 have to add up to 90. So I'll do that first. A plus 30 must equal a total of 90 degrees because they are complementary angles. They add to 90. Now, by doing that, I've written an equation. All I have to do now is solve for A. So minus 30 on both sides. So 90 minus 30. And it leaves me with 60 degrees. So that was pretty straightforward. So A is 60 degrees. And I can check and see 60 plus 30, yeah, gives me 90. Now my B is out here and I can see the angle of B is starting to form a circle, but it's not a full circle. If I kept going round, I would have a full circle. So a full circle we know is 360 degrees. So to make that full circle, I have to add on that 90 degrees and I have a full circle. So that means B plus that 90 degrees will have to add up to 360. Once again, I've got an equation. So B equals 360, take away 90. So B will equal 270 degrees. So that was pretty straightforward. So always check and see what angle you're trying to find and what it can add up to. Okay, so for our next one, we've got two lines crossing over and we have to also find angles A and B. Now, just stop and see what we've got. We know that with a straight line, if I've just got a straight line, which is really two lines put together, they all add up to 180 degrees. So if I broke this line up into two parts, these two angles, angle 1 and 2, will add up to 180. So with this question, that's important because I can see that I've got two lines, so that means I'm dealing with 180 degrees. If it helps, redraw a diagram where you're only focusing on one thing at a time. So I'm going to work out my A. If I redrew this part of my question like this, I've got to find A, and then that's 65 degrees. So it's supposed to be a straight line. I'll do it again. So 65 and A. I can see 65 and A have to add up to 180. So write an equation, A plus 65 equals 180. So A is equal to 180 minus 65, which means A would be 115 degrees. So A is done. Now that I've found A, I can now find B doing the same thing. I've got another line here. If I redraw that one for B, there's my B. I've got 115 degrees there. So I can find angle B knowing that angle B and angle A are supplementary. They add to 180. So B plus 115 degrees, which was my A, is equal to 180. So B is equal to 180 minus 115. So B is equal to 65 degrees. Our next question, C, is dealing with different types of angles and relationships. When we see two parallel lines, so we can see we've got a parallel line here and one there, and you have a line crossing over, that line is actually called the transversal. It forms relationships between the angles. We can have alternate angles. So A and B are alternate angles, which are equal. We can have co-interior. So the angles on the inside, like B and C, would add up to 180. We can have opposite angles. So 120 and B are opposite, so they'd be equal. So these are things that you have to remember. So using our knowledge we've learned in the past, we're going to work out all these angles, A, B, and C. Okay, so looking at my diagram here, I've written down the sorry, I just did that again. Okay, so using your knowledge of these angles and their relationships, you should have come up with these points. So for example, if I look at 120 here and A, they are corresponding, which means they are equal. So straight away, I can see A will be 120 just by that knowledge. And if you're not sure about corresponding, the way I remember is you've got your two parallel lines. So they're your parallel lines here. Sorry, I'm having trouble with this app. So they're your parallel lines just there. So corresponding is when you've got one angle on the inside of those parallel lines and one on the outside of a parallel line. Okay, so they're corresponding. Sometimes it helps, people like to draw a Z shape along these lines, but do what's best, that what works for you, as long as you can identify what you have. So 120 and A are corresponding, so A is equal to 120 because they are equal angles. I've also got 120 and B are opposite angles. So you can see there's 120 and straight across there's a B there. Because they are opposite angles, they are equal as well. So B will also equal 120 degrees. I've got next B and C are co-interior. So interior means inside. B and C are both inside the parallel lines, but also on the same side. So they're co-interior, and that means they would add up to 180 degrees. So if B is 120, I know B is 120, that means C will have to be 60, because 120 plus 60 gives me 80. So C is 60 degrees. So I have found all my unknown angles, but there were other ways to figure them out. For example, I've also got A and B here are alternate angles. See how they're both inside the parallel lines, but on either side? That means they are equal. So I could have said A is 120 as well, because B is 120. And also A and C, we've got A and C here, they are supplementary. They are on that straight line. So they also add up to 180 degrees. So there's heaps of relationships you can work with. Just make sure you can identify which one is which, okay? Okay, have a go at our next one, D. Okay, so for this question, we can see we have a triangle, and then we also can see the triangles sort of broken up. And there's a parallel line over here and a parallel line at its base. So just to observe, we know a triangle, all the angles of a triangle, so this one here, that one there, and this one up here, would add up to 180 degrees. But we're not actually working with this angle over here. But you never know, just in case it might be useful. So when I can see I've got two parallel lines. So the best option is you can either extend these parallel lines, that might help, or draw them separately. Because we actually have two lines of the triangle now crossing over those parallel lines. So work with one line at a time. So what I mean is I'm going to redraw the two parallel lines in that triangle. So I've got them there. And I'm going to draw this line over here by itself, cutting through just like that. And then that's where I've got the 75 degrees and I've got A. I'm going to work with just this part. I'm going to break it up to make it easier. Now, if I look at this, I've got two parallel lines and a line cutting through. So that's where those relationships come in. Now, 75 and A are both inside those parallel lines, which means they are co-interior. So 75 plus A have to add up to 180, like we did before. So A would be 180 take away 75, which leaves me with 105 degrees. So A would be 105 degrees. So I've done my first variable. Now I have to find B. Now B is an angle that is touching a different line. So if I redraw B by itself, so to draw the parallel lines first, we need those. And our B is belonging to this other line going that way and in here, part of that other triangle. Now, I also can see this 64. I'm going to draw it right there. That's where it belongs. And now I can see what I have. I've got two parallel lines, a line cutting through. B is in here, and that 64 is out there. When you've got that relationship, one on the inside and one on the outside, but on the same sort of, both are on this side here, They're not alternate angles, but they are corresponding. One on the inside, one on the outside, which means B has to equal 64 degrees. And that's it. So when it comes to diagrams like this, it's useful to be able to break them up if you can. And remember, you're working with two parallel lines and one cutting through.